Hey, what's going on everybody, and welcome back to another Fallout 4 modding tutorial. It's been a while since we've done a tutorial, but you guys have been persistent in asking for a weapon modding tutorial, so today we're going to start a new series where I will be teaching you how to make your own weapon mod from scratch. I think I've done it enough times now that I've got all the basics down. And there are a lot of really good modding tutorials out there already, especially things like the Rizzler's tutorial. You can find a very long playlist and he will teach you every in and out and every detail of how to make a weapon mod. It's where I learned a lot of the stuff that I know now. But that tutorial I think is very advanced and there are a lot of things in it and it's very long. So I'm going to try to focus a bit more on beginners and trying to break things down in a simpler way that's easy to understand, and I'll be using free resources. A lot of the things in the Rizzler's tutorial will include things like 3ds Max, whereas I'll be using Blender. That being said, there are a couple of paid resources I use like Photoshop and Substance Painter, but those do have free alternatives that you can use instead. They'll just need a different tutorial in place of that. Now, all that being said, there's a lot of software that you're going to need in order to create your own weapon mod, and they're all going to be different depending on which part you're doing. The purpose of today's video, episode 1, is going to be setting up everything in the CK and getting a functional weapon in-game, whereas next video will be focusing on modeling and getting in actual assets into the game. So the softwares that you're going to need are going to differ depending on the video. I will have links provided down in the description below for everything that you should need. Now, the first thing that you're going to need in today's video is pretty simple. You're going to need the creation kit. So I'll have a link down to that in the description below. And by now, if you've already opened up the creation kit, you'll notice that yours looks a lot different from mine. And that's because I'm using a CK fix mod that makes it run faster. It has nice dark mode like this and a couple of other neat features. I'll have that link down in the description below as well if you want to try it out, but it's not at all necessary. It just has some quality of life stuff that I enjoy. Now, with all that intro stuff out of the way, let's go ahead and talk shop. Today we will be creating a new pistol mod, at least I am. You can make whatever it is that you want, and for the most part the method is going to be the same. I'm going to be creating something based on sort of the Frommerstopp pistol, which is a pretty interesting one, and that's something that I believe could use the vanilla animations from the Deliverer. Now, custom animations are a nice thing, but they are very difficult and they're not even something that I've really wrapped my head around yet. And since this is a beginner-focused tutorial, we're going to grab weapons that use vanilla animations. So when it comes to designing your own weapon mod, keep in mind vanilla animations and think of something that could use a vanilla animation when you make it. Now, since we're in the CK here, let's go ahead and open up this yellow folder at the top left of your screen right underneath File. And we're going to go ahead and set up our mod. Now, if you know that it's going to require some DLC items, you're going to check every single master that you're going to need. For mine, since we're just using the Deliverer and no other assets, I'm going to double click on the Fallout4.esm. But if you know that you're going to use some items from Nuka World or from Far Harbor, you're going to double click those as well. Do not click Set as Active File. That is for later whenever we edit our already existing mod. So double click Fallout4.esm and click OK. And there it's going to load all of our game files so that we can play around with all of the fun assets in Fallout 4. So go ahead and give that a second and we'll be right back once it's done loading. Alright, once it's done loading, you should see a bit more stuff on your screen, including a handful of categories in the object window here where you have things like actors, audio, character items, etc., and also some world space. Now while we're in the CK, assuming that you are a new user, this is probably all new to you. So again, your setup may not look identically to mine, but you should have something like an object window here, a render window, and a cell view. The render window and the cell view are not going to be super necessary for us in the purposes of creating a weapon mod. They can be if you're going to be placing things in the world, but for the most part, we're going to be using the object window here. Now then, like I said earlier, we're going to be using the Deliverer as a base, and for the most part, when it comes to making a mod and you're learning things, you're going to be stealing a lot of stuff. And I don't mean that seriously, you're not actually stealing, you're just going to be borrowing things to copy over. So for starters, let's go ahead and find ourselves the Deliverer. So using the search bar, we're going to go ahead and search for it. It'll take some time to load, and after a second, I will see my Deliverer here. Now, if you're making something that's, say, based off the combat shotgun, search for the combat shotgun. Now, you'll see that there are a lot of items here, some of which are co-mods, misc mods, leveled list integration. What you're looking for is the name of the weapon, which is next to a sword and shield and axe, since this is based on the Skyrim's creation kit. You're going to go ahead and double click that, and give it a second as it's going to load in the stats of the weapon, and here we have the Deliverer's page in this creation kit. As you can see, we have a little display view of the deliverer on the right, as well as all of its stats and fun information. Now then, from here, this is basically where you're going to make your base for a weapon mod. This is where you're going to change out the stats, its features, its keywords, its name, value, ammo type, all of that fun stuff is done right here. And that's what we're going to be focusing on today. So in order to make a copy of this, there are multiple methods. You could just duplicate it, but from here, I want to go ahead and go up to the name where it says deliverer. And since we're making sort of a Frommer stop, we'll just call it that. Call it Frommer space stop. You can name the weapon whatever you want since it is your own weapon. I'm sure you're just following along. Do whatever you need to do for your mod. Now above that, you'll see there is a tag called ID. This is going to be what it refers to behind the scenes. You'll never see this in game. This is just something that you're going to use in the CK to find your weapon. So I'm just going to call it Frommer. I'd recommend picking a pretty unique name. So if you're using something, let's say you're making an advanced combat shotgun and you named it Advanced Combat Shotgun. You'd want to come up with a pretty unique ID, as every time you type in combat shotgun, it's going to load up your mod and the vanilla weapon. So there's no vanilla item called Frommer, so I'm pretty good. You come up with whatever's going to work for you, but still tells you what you're looking for. And those are the only two things we need to change right off the bat. We're going to select OK, and it's going to ask us if we want to create a new object. This is a good sign. It means we haven't messed with any vanilla forms. So since we have changed to a new ID, it's going to create us a totally new weapon, and we're going to say yes. And then from there, it will close. And now when we head over to our search bar, instead of looking up the deliverer, we're going to look up Frommer. And I put in one too many M's there. Let me just get rid of one of those, and there it is. As you can see, our Frommer weapon ID is right there, but we do not have any of the stuff that the deliverer had. That's all going to be set up over the coming tutorial episodes. Now then, we'll go ahead and open up our Frommer so that we can start messing with the stats. Now, there are a lot of features here, and I don't want to go over just what a pistol does, as you might be creating something like an energy weapon or a shotgun, and you want to know what all of these little checkboxes and fun things do, so I'm going to try to be brief and do just that. For starters, we have our ID and name, which we went over already. You see we have an enchanting section. This is where you can add an enchantment to it if you have, say, a legendary variant of the weapon, which we may talk about in a later episode. There is the value section. This one's pretty self-explanatory. What is the base value of the weapon? We'll make ours 69. Nice. Then we have the template. You can choose a template from here, but I would recommend just leaving that to none, as we're going to use the object template section later. The preview transform, this is going to be based on whatever weapon type you're using, and since we're using a pistol, obviously it's set to pistol 00. This is something you shouldn't need to change if you're basing your weapon off of an existing vanilla weapon. For example, if you're using the combat shotgun, it should already be set to shotgun, so you should be good there. Over on the right, you'll see a section called Object Template. That's very important later when it comes to setting up attachments and leveled lists, but that'll be for a different episode. For here, we have the flags section where you see a lot of interesting things, and these are pretty important. We have NPCs use ammo, ignores normal weapon resistances, automatic, you set this if you want it to be automatic, can't drop, not used in normal combat, non-hostile, has scope, secondary weapon. These are all very important flags, and they're all pretty self-explanatory. The only ones that I know that are very, very important that actually change the functions of the weapon are automatic, as it will make your weapon an automatic weapon. You have repeatable single fire. This will make it a semi-automatic weapon, but if you hold down the trigger, it will fire repeatedly as if it were automatic, but it's still treated as a semi-automatic weapon in terms of perks. So this is something that's featured on a vanilla weapon like the plasma rifle. And then you also have player only, which makes this weapon something that can only be used by the player. We have hold to input to power. This is something like the Gauss rifle where you have to hold it and charge it. And those are the most important ones as far as I know. Now, underneath that, we have all of your fun stats, and these ones are all pretty self-explanatory. We have our weight. What is the base weight of this pistol? Let's call it 4 pounds. The reach, that's more for melee. The speed is going to change the fire rate of your weapon. Reload speed is going to change the reload speed. Attack delay in seconds is going to be the delay between pulling the trigger and firing. Projectiles is the number of projectiles. Since ours is a standard pistol, it's 1. But if you're using something like a shotgun, you could increase that to 8, as it's going to shoot 8 pellets. Then you have things like accuracy bonus, crit charge bonus, sighted transition in seconds. Most of these you're going to want to leave for the most part the same. Sighted transition could be different. If you're using a pretty heavy pistol, you might want to increase that. And then attack action point cost, that's for VATS. Since I myself am not a VATS user, I usually leave these pretty default, but if you want to tweak that to make it more for a VATS user, then you could do that as well. Then we have override projectile. This is important if you wanted to shoot something that it doesn't normally shoot. So for example, our weapon is set currently to 10mm, so it's going to shoot a 10mm projectile. But if you wanted it to shoot something else like a laser, you could set that here with the override projectile, or you could add that keyword later on an attachment. Now, for the most part, the next few checkboxes are things you're going to want to leave alone, like the resist section and on hit. On hit is going to say the behavior of the projectile. For example, a pistol isn't going to do anything. It's going to have normal behavior, but if you were to open that up, you would see things like dismember and explode. That would be more for explosive type weapons. Zoom data, we're going to leave to none. We don't need to have it behave like a recon scope. And then the naming instance, DN_common gun. This treats it whenever you add an attachment like a reflex scope and it renames it to tactical pistol or whatever it is that you're making. That's because of this common gun naming list here, which you can set up a custom version of, but do not ever modify the vanilla one. And then we have the aim model, which is going to be the aim model of the weapon. Again, if you're basing this off of a vanilla weapon, this is something you're going to want to leave the same for the most part. All right, now the juicy stuff. We have our minimum and maximum range. We have our damages, our out of range multiplier, our crit damage multiplier, and our secondary damage. The range, self-explanatory, that is the range at which the weapon shoots. The base damage is the base damage. Now, the deliverer's base damage is 25, and it's a bit later in the game. I want my weapon to be a pretty early weapon with 38 caliber rounds, so I'm going to drop that damage down to 18. And then we have the out of range multiplier, which is going to be the damage reduction when the target is out of range. The crit damage multiplier whenever you get a critical. These are things I'm going to leave the same. Secondary damage is how much damage the weapon does when it bashes. For the most part, you're going to want to leave this the same unless you have a custom weapon who maybe has built-in brass knuckles like the lever action shotgun, in which case you're going to want to crank that damage up just a little bit. We also have stagger and melee speed. These are going to change your bash, I believe, on a weapon, but if it's a melee weapon, these are far more important. Then we have the damage type section. For a pistol, this is going to be pretty empty, though if you're using an energy weapon, you may have things in here like incendiary damage or energy damage, stuff like that. And then finally here at the bottom, we have the ammo. This is something very important. As you can see, it's set to ammo 10mm. Well, I said earlier I want mine to be 38, so we're going to change it to ammo 38 caliber. If you're using a shotgun, you'll set that to shotgun shells. If you're using a laser weapon, maybe a fusion cell, etc. The capacity is currently set to 8, and that actually sounds about right. I think that's what the base magazine size is going to be for my weapon, though that's something I can easily change later on. You'll see down here we also have things like charging attack, charging reload, disable shells, and bolt action. Only check those if they apply to your weapon. Mine's not a bolt action, so I'm not going to apply that. Pretty simple stuff. Then we have the NPC add ammo list. Now this is important. If your weapon is going to be added to the leveled list, it needs to have the appropriate ammo type to show up on enemies. Now, since we are using 38, we're going to look for LL_ammo_38. And right here it is, LL_ammo_38 caliber. If you're using 50 cal, use 50 cal, 45, 44, whatever applies to your weapon. Now there is one other very, very important section over here on the right, and that is the keywords section and the attached parent slots. If you're going to be mimicking the vanilla weapon exactly, then the parent slots don't really matter. But if you're ever going to add in different attachments, this will. Although typically you'll be modifying the receiver's parent slots, not the weapon itself. It just kind of depends on how the vanilla weapon is set up. But here we have the keywords. Keywords are pretty much how you do everything in the CK, at least when it comes to weapons. This is how you're going to add mod associations and attachments and neat features, stuff like that. They're always going to have keywords associated with them. For example, here at the top we have Anim's Deliverer. This is going to make it use the Deliverer animations. If you were to have custom animations, it would have an animation keyword for those custom animations. It also has Anim's Pistol Grip. This is going to tell your character how to actually hold the weapon in third person and what animations to use as you're moving around with a pistol. We have Featured Item, which I'm not going to lie to you, I don't remember that keyword, so we're going to ignore that for just a second. And then really important here, we have the mod association. This is one that we're going to need to create a new keyword for. This is something that will be done in the attachment section of the series. And when we do that, we're going to set up a mod association for our weapon rather than the deliverer. As of right now, because it has the mod association with the deliverer, even though it is a separate weapon, it will use all of the deliverer's attachments, which could be interesting if you wanted it to do that, but because we don't, we're going to change that later. That being said, if you were making, let's say, a mod that was a unique version of the deliverer, you would leave that because it would have all the deliverer's attachment, and then you could throw on your own mod association to add unique attachments that were only available for your weapon. Mod associations is a very important keyword, and it's something to keep in mind. You also have the mod association here with can have null muzzle. This just means that your weapon can have an attachment slot with no muzzle brake, and it's fine. So like when you go to the weapons workbench and you want to add on a compensator or a suppressor, it's not required for this weapon. It can have no muzzle brake. We also have the object type weapon. That just tells us that this is a weapon. Quick key gun is going to do a similar feature. Important keywords here is S_40_ pistol covert. This is going to tell us the sound of the weapon when it fires. Now this is something that we could actually change right now. Let's say we wanted to make a different sound. What's a good sound? Let's actually add one. We're going to go ahead and right click here. If you want to change out the keywords, we're going to click add, and we're going to find S_40_, and then we'll go ahead and look through here. What would be a fun sound for our pistol? I want it to be something light, probably something like a pipe rifle. So if we can find something like that, we'll go ahead and add it. Aha, so right here we have S_handmade pipe A. We're going to use that. And since we have that now, we can delete S_pistol covert. So whatever sound you want your weapon to use, you just add it like that and delete the original. We also have the sound S_iron sights pistol. That's just going to be the sound of whenever you're moving the weapon around and aiming down sights. We're going to leave that the same. And then the last one is weapon type ballistic. If you were going to change this to a laser pistol, then you would change it out for an energy weapon keyword, but we're going to leave it since mine is a pretty basic pistol. And then from there, from the parent slots, we can see the receiver and the legendary attachment. This lets us throw on a legendary if you actually have this thing added to legendary drops. And the receiver allows you to attach different receivers, which in turn have their own attach points for barrels, magazines, etc. Now, technically, there is still a little bit more here to be done, and that is the art and sound section. This is where you would swap out models. For example, right here, you'll notice that it says that we're using the 10mm pistol model, but this is not a 10mm pistol. Well, that's because they based the deliverer off the 10mm pistol and then made edits to it, just like we're doing right now. So this is actually a total normal process. In reality, we'll never be using the art and sound section to add in our new models. When we get to the modeling section, that will be done via attachments. So you'll actually add this model to your receiver rather than to the weapon itself. From here, though, you can also add things like the impact data set. So if you wanted it to be incendiary rounds or cryo rounds, then you would add that here. You also have a couple of other things like attack sounds and stuff. But for the most part, we're going to leave this section the same. It's pretty rare that you're going to need to use this, but just look through it. Again, the most important part here, I think, is the impact data set. Rumble is going to be for the controller for Xbox. This is a section you don't need to mess with at all. And yeah, that is the weapon category for our pistol here. So we're going to click OK. With that, we have our fully set up Frommer stop. So it's going to be a pistol right now. As we take it in game, you'll see that it looks exactly like the deliverer. Next episode is going to be about modeling and getting in our custom assets. But for now, we just need to make sure that what we did actually worked. So we're going to click OK. We're going to click File and Save. And from here, we're going to choose a plugin name. I'm going to call it Frommer. And then we'll click Enter. And it's saved. Now, depending on how you're opening this up, it's going to save differently. If you're using this directly through Fallout 4, it's going to be saved into your data folder, whereas for me, since I'm using MO2, it's going to be in my overwrite folder. So go ahead and grab that file, and we'll talk about what to do next. All right, now once out of the creation kit, go ahead and double check your data folder for Fallout 4, and you will find that you do in fact have, we're not in the data folder. Go into the data folder and scroll down, and you will find that you do in fact have your ESP. As you can see down at the bottom here, I have frommer.esp. Now you can leave it there, or if you're using MO2, you can zip that into a file and load it in as a mod. It's really up to you, however you want to do it, but just make sure that it is available in your Fallout 4 directory. And then we're going to go ahead and launch the game. So go ahead and load up F4SE, and I will see you in just a second. Alright, now that we are in game, we're going to open up the console and see if our mod actually works. So hit the tilde key to open up the console, and you're going to type in the command help space and then enter the ID of your weapon. For mine it is Frommer. It should be only one word, so if your ID is multiple words, just use the first word or the word that is the most unique, and then hit space again, 4, the number 4, space WEAP. So we have help Frommer for wep, and then we're going to hit enter, and it's going to show us that there is actually a weapon that is labeled Frommer Stop, and it has the ID code A8000F99. So we're going to hit player dot add item space A81230 F99. The code is going to be different for you, so just enter whatever code it is for your weapon. Click enter, and you will see that we now have a suppressed Frommer Stop pistol. Now you'll notice that mine does have a unique legendary effect whenever I pick it up. That's something I'm going to want to remove in the console. That's probably what that featured item keyword was, so that's an easy fix, something that I'll do for my mod. Go ahead and click OK, and we'll check in my inventory, and there it is, the Frommer Stop pistol. Pretty neat stuff. Now, the last step is just to make sure that your weapon actually has all the changes that you made in the CK, which if you already have it in game, it very well should. The most notable thing to look out for is the fact that we changed our ammunition type. So as you can see down here, it is 38 instead of 10mm. Pretty simple change and a very easy one to find in game, just to make sure that everything is on the up and up. So yeah, that was a lot of video for a pretty simple mod, but this is a series. Again, there will be more episodes. Next time we're going to talk about modeling, and that's when this is going to really take shape to be its own unique weapon, not just a deliverer with a different name. And that's pretty much it for the tutorial side of stuff. Before we go, I do want to give a big shout out to all of my patrons. You guys make special videos like this possible. Thank you so much for your continued support. And if you like the stuff I'm doing and you'd like to support me further, you can check out the Patreon for exclusive perks like Discord roles and early access to my mods, but it is completely optional. Now, one more quick thing before we go. I'm sure a few of you are wondering, why are you already working on another mod if you're still working on the lever action shotgun? And the reason being, like I've said before, the lever action shotgun is actually just about done, at least in regards to what I'm doing. The next step is for me to hand it off to another author to make a quest for it. So while I wait for that to come out, I'm going to go ahead and start on the next mod. And I figured, since I'm going to be doing the mod anyways, I may as well record the process so you guys could have a nice tutorial to follow along with for anybody who's aspiring to be a mod author themselves and would like to learn how to make weapon mods. So I hope this video was helpful at all. I know this was a lot of CK stuff and this video is going to be pretty boring, but hopefully future videos will have more interesting information, but this is a very necessary step to get everything working. With that, let me know if you guys actually like the series and you'd like to see more episodes, because if nobody watches this and nobody wants to see it, then I suppose I don't need to continue it, but I absolutely plan to, so long as you guys are interested. Can't wait to see how this weapon comes out, and I would love to have your guys' input along the way, and I hope this inspires you to make some weapon mods of your own. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to drop a like, subscribe if you haven't already for more videos just like this. We will have many mod tutorials coming soon, as well as other Fallout 4 modding videos, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. Peace!